redistricting. We are entitled to 5 more seats. So yeah, Trump is basically outright calling for the gerrymandering of Texas congressional districts. Now, my understanding about how congressional districts are drawn, there are certain rules about how the districts can and can't be drawn. One of the rules is that it can't be drawn explicitly on racial racial lines, right? You can't have a district come out and be like, you can't have the state of Texas be like, all right, we're going to purposefully try and redistrict all black people together and then all the Hispanics together and then all the whites together, so to consolidate the power for one of these groups over the others. They're not allowed to do that, and there's a whole bunch of complicated analysis that can be done to determine whether it meets the threshold of racial bias or not. And obviously, to the extent that some of these places want to do that but aren't allowed to, they kind of toe the line and do what they can under the guise of plausible deniability. Certainly. A super weird, annoying loophole to all of this is how technically, right, there are basically there are very few rules about redistricting, right? Because theoretically, within the Constitution, the elections in each state are within the purview of the state, right? The state has quite a bit of leeway about how they implement their elections and certain details around the election they have deference on. Basically, it is not illegal to gerrymander for political reasons, right? It's illegal to gerrymander for racial reasons. It is not illegal to gerrymander for explicitly political reasons. And so knowing this, before it used to be that that would still be untenable, right? Even though it's not illegal, coming out and saying we want to redistrict for explicitly political reasons because we just want 5 more Democratic seats, we just want 5 more Republican seats, no more reasoning than that, would be untenable. I think at least to some degree, they played hide the ball with that sort of thing, right? They had to try and pretend that's not what they're doing. But Trump's just coming out full pants down, balls in the wind. We want those 5 seats, baby. We don't want Democrats to have them. We want Republicans to have them. He's openly and brazenly calling for Texas to gerrymander in favor of the Republicans. President Donald Trump on Tuesday said Republicans were entitled to 5 more seats in Texas in one of his first public comments on the state's new proposed congressional map. Trump had remained quiet on the state's redrawn map since it was introduced, despite brewing commotion over the Republican partisan gerrymander that prompted dozens of state Democratic lawmakers to flee the state in a last-ditch attempt to block the map's passage over the weekend. We'll cover that in our next story. Yeah, basically, they needed a quorum to get this passed, and the Democratic members of the Texas House and Senate realized that, said this is absolute lunacy, and we're not going to be a part of this, and so they fled the state and said, you know what, we're not even going to give you guys a quorum. A quorum means that they have a certain threshold of the number of actual people's feet on the ground in the Capitol or in the building or whatever when they're holding the vote for the vote to be legitimate, right? Let's say there's 100 members of the Senate and maybe their quorum threshold is 60, right? So if only 50 members of the Senate are there, they can't just pass legislation while the other 50 members of the Senate are there. They need at least 10 more senators to be there to pass, to be able to, to meet quorum requirements and start actually passing legislation. And so that was the idea behind Democratic members of the Texas House and Senate fleeing the state, is to deny them the quorum and deny them the ability to sign this gerrymandered map into law. The map could net Republicans as many as 5 seats in the state. It has triggered an arms race across the country, with Democratic-controlled states, most notably California, pledging to gerrymander their own maps in response. Absolutely. This is the exact kind of response the Democrats have to have moving forward with regards to every political issue, right? As soon as the Republicans come in and upend the table, they completely change the rules, literally throw precedent out the window, decades of precedent out the window. I mean, there is absolutely no reason for the Democrats to cling on to these things while the Republicans are taking advantage of them, right? It's just absolutely insane. Trump. No, I have to do it all in his voice. We have an opportunity in Texas to pick up 5 seats. We have a really good governor, and we have a good people in Texas, and I won in Texas. Trump told CNBC's Squawk Box, I got the highest vote in the history of Texas, as you probably know, and we are entitled to 5 more seats. I don't understand. So is his reasoning that because he won by a large margin, he won the presidential election in the general by a large margin, that therefore the congressional maps should be redrawn to give the Republicans more congressional seats in Texas? That doesn't, I don't understand. This is what I mean, right? He doesn't have to come up with any reasonable, plausible, deniable reason, right? He can just say, I just want the seats. It doesn't matter. They don't have to hide the ball anymore. It's totally mask off. Texas Republicans last week unveiled a new congressional map of the state that, if passed by the state's legislature, would boost the party's chance of maintaining control in the House in the 2026 midterms. It came after pressure from the Trump aides to redraw the map, along with the Department of Justice alleging that the previous map could be illegal, even as Trump makes it clear that the redraw is predominantly driven by politics. Scores of Democratic state lawmakers left the state in an attempt to stop Republicans from implementing the map by denying the legislature a quorum. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has repeatedly avowed to expel the absent Democrats from the legislature if they fail to return to the state for its ongoing special session. Trump on Tuesday bashed the departed Democrats, some of whom fled to Illinois on Sunday, calling the situation terrible. So yeah, I mean, I fully stand by Governor Gavin Newsom in California saying that, look, if Texas comes out and openly, brazenly, without any level of plausible deniability, gerrymanders their seats just because they can, just because they have a Supreme Court that's favorable to them and will allow them to do that, then absolutely it is the duty, I would argue. It is the only correct way forward for Democrats in their respective states to do the exact same thing, right? As soon as this sort of thing gets passed in Texas, the rules have changed. The rules have officially, from this point on in American politics, with regards to gerrymandering, with regards to congressional district appropriation, have officially changed, and that the Democrats need to understand that, need to not continue playing 20 or 30 years in the past like they do in so many other issues, and take advantage of this. Play the game of politics from the metagame perspective, from top down. Don't be stuck 50 years in the past with your idea of precedent. You've watched too much of the West Wing TV show, and you just think like everything works like it's supposed to, and you can make deals with Republicans, and the Supreme Court justices are good faith legal actors with just different sort of interpretations of legalness or whatever. It's just, no.